You ever find yourself in a conversation, maybe a really important one, and all of a sudden, the only thing you can think about is your own eyes? It's like a switch just flips, and this whole internal monologue starts running. Am I looking too much? Am I not looking enough? Oh man, did I just stare at their forehead for a full second? If you have ever felt that strange, kind of creeping, unspoken awkwardness around eye contact, well, I am so glad you're here. Because today we're gonna dive deep into one of the most universal yet least discussed human experiences. We're gonna look this topic straight in the eye and uncover the fascinating and frankly super reassuring science of why it can feel so incredibly hard.
Okay, let's just jump right in. I want you to try a little thought experiment with me. Really, just settle in and imagine this. You're sitting across from someone, could be anyone, a stranger on a bus, a new coworker, and they just lock eyes with you. Let's count it out. 1, 2, 3. They're not looking away. 4, 5, 6. Are they even blinking? 7, 8, 9, 10 solid seconds. Unbroken, intense eye contact. Just thinking about it, how does that feel in your body right now? Can you feel that little jolt of adrenaline, that subtle tightening in your chest or your stomach, that primal, overwhelming urge to just look down, check your phone, to focus on literally anything else in the room?
If you felt even a flicker of that discomfort, congratulations. Your brain is working exactly as it should be. Let me say that again because this is probably the most important thing we're going to talk about today. That feeling is not a sign that you're weak or dishonest or awkward. It is a complex, ancient, and deeply ingrained neurobiological reaction. It's your brain's own sophisticated defense system kicking into gear, trying to protect you from what it sees as an overwhelming flood of information and, yeah, potentially even a threat. So the key here is we need to reframe this whole thing. This isn't a character issue, it's a brain issue, and it exists on a spectrum, from a little momentary discomfort most of us feel to a really deeply distressing experience for others. And that brings us right to the heart of the conflict, doesn't it? We're all caught in this constant, unspoken staring contest. This battle between what our culture demands of us and what our biology can actually reasonably handle. So let's really take a closer look at this biological burden. This slide really just lays it all out, the stark contrast we face every single day. On one side, you've got the immense weight of social pressure. I mean, from the time we're kids, we hear, "Look at me when I'm talking to you." Eye contact is taught like it's the currency of character. It's supposed to signal confidence in a job interview, honesty on a first date, respect when you're listening to someone. But then, you look at the other side, there's the biological cost. For so many of us, forcing that contact triggers this whole cascade of stress responses. A simple conversation can suddenly feel like a high-stakes confrontation. We're trying so hard to connect, but our internal wiring is just flashing red alerts, basically screaming at us to abort the mission. Now, there's actually a scientific term for this feeling, and it's called over-arousal. And no, not in that way. This is physiological. It's a state where your nervous system just spikes because it's being flooded with way too much sensory data. I mean, think about it. When you look into someone's eyes, you're not just seeing. You are unconsciously processing a massive amount of information. Their pupil dilation, their blink rate, every single tiny microexpression that flickers across their face in a fraction of a second. For a brain, especially a sensitive one, that is like trying to take a sip of water from a fire hose. It's just way too much data to process at once without feeling completely overwhelmed. And that feeling of over-arousal, it creates such a vicious cycle. It leads to what psychologists call social performance anxiety. Suddenly, you're not even in a conversation anymore. You're an actor on a stage, and your only goal is to look natural. Your internal monologue is going wild. Okay, look at them now. Hold it, hold it. Was that too long? Look away. Now where do I look? The wall? My hands? Okay, look back now. You become so consumed with performing the active correct eye contact that your brain has zero cognitive capacity left to actually listen to the words being said or to even formulate your own thoughts. It is absolutely exhausting. So let's go a little deeper. Let's pull back the curtain and see what is actually going on inside your skull during these moments. Because this isn't just some vague feeling. This is a full-blown neurological war between your ancient primal instincts and your modern intellectual brain. So I want you to meet the main character in this whole drama, the amygdala. It's this tiny almond-shaped cluster of neurons deep inside your brain. Think of it as your brain's hyper-vigilant security guard, or maybe a smoke detector that's just a little too sensitive. Its primary job, its only job really, is to constantly scan your environment for danger. And at the slightest provocation, it just smashes a big red button that triggers that famous fight or flight response.
It doesn't think, it just reacts.
And this perfectly illustrates why that little security guard, your amygdala, is so suspicious of being stared at. I mean, evolutionarily speaking, in the animal kingdom, prolonged direct eye contact is almost never a friendly thing. If you look at our primate relatives, it's a straight-up challenge for dominance. Between a predator and its prey, it's that final terrifying moment right before an attack. So your brain, which is still running on this ancient survival-focused software, can interpret a direct gaze not as a friendly attempt to connect, but as a potential threat to your very survival. Now, for people with social anxiety, this system isn't just active, it is in total overdrive. Their amygdala is hypersensitive, kind of like a car alarm that goes off if a leaf falls on it. It misinterprets neutral or even friendly social cues, like eye contact in a team meeting, as a sign of aggression or judgment. So imagine you're at work and your boss looks at you while someone else is talking. An average brain might not even register it, but a brain with social anxiety, the amygdala hits the panic button. It floods the body with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart starts pounding, your palms get sweaty, your mind goes blank. In that moment, looking away isn't a choice. It's a biological imperative. It's your primal brain saying, "I'm not a threat, please don't hurt me." It's a de-escalation tactic.
But, and this is where it gets really, really fascinating, it's not always about fear. There's another, completely different reason we look away, and it's called the interference hypothesis. Groundbreaking research has shown that our brains are just, well, they're not very good at multitasking when it comes to two very specific, very demanding jobs. One, processing the incredibly complex details of a human face, and two, generating complex, abstract thoughts and putting them into words. It turns out, these two tasks draw from the very same, very limited pool of cognitive resources.
This is, hands down, the best analogy for understanding this whole idea. Looking away to think is the cognitive equivalent of turning down the car radio when you're trying to navigate a tricky parallel parking spot. You have to reduce the incoming sensory data, the music, to free up the mental bandwidth you need for the complex task at hand. So when you're in a conversation and you look up at the ceiling to answer a tough question, you're not being rude. You are literally turning down the face music so your brain can access its files and load the data it needs to give a thoughtful, intelligent response. Now, while this interference effect and this amygdala response are pretty common experiences, it's so important to understand that for some people, the challenge of eye contact is even more profound. So let's explore how this plays out in the context of neurodivergence. Because for many on the autism spectrum or with ADHD, this isn't just about awkwardness or cognitive load. The experience can be something else entirely. The key here is the shift in intensity. For many neurodivergent brains, direct eye contact can feel intensely, physically invasive. It's been described as a spotlight being shone directly into your soul. It can trigger a full-blown sensory overload, where the sheer volume of social and emotional information coming from another person's eyes becomes overwhelming and genuinely painful, making it nearly impossible to listen or think, or even just remain present in the conversation. The neuroscience behind this is just wild. It involves a part of the brain called the fusiform gyrus. You can think of this as our brain's specialized hub for facial recognition. Now, what neuroimaging studies suggest is that in many autistic brains, the connection between this facial processor and the amygdala, our little threat detector, is hyper-connected or oversensitive. This basically turns the volume dial on the stimulus of a human face all the way up to 11, making eye contact not just emotionally intense, but sensorially overwhelming. And this right here is maybe the single most important takeaway from this section. When a neurodivergent person looks away from you, it is not a snub, it is not a sign of disinterest or a social failing. It is a vital, necessary, and often unconscious strategy for self-regulation. It is a way to manage an overwhelming sensory environment, to conserve precious mental energy, and to prevent the profound cognitive and emotional burnout that can come from trying to force social masking. It's a coping mechanism, and honestly, it's brilliant. Okay, so we have journeyed deep into the why. We get the evolutionary reasons, the cognitive load, the neurological wiring that can make eye contact so challenging for so many different people. Now, let's pivot from the problem to the solutions, and this is the empowering part. It is absolutely possible to create connection without all the stress and anxiety. We just need to replace the old, rigid rules with a new, smarter toolkit. So we're gonna walk through 5 simple, science-backed techniques. And I wanna be clear, this is not about forcing yourself into uncomfortable staring contests. This is about finding a new rhythm, a new way to dance with the gaze that feels authentic, manageable, and frankly, a lot more effective. We'll cover the brilliant 50-70 rule, the game-changing triangle technique, the power of strategic looking away, how to soften your focus, and finally, how to reframe the entire meaning of the interaction. First up, the 50-70 rule. This one is so liberating because it completely shatters the myth that you need 100% eye contact to be effective. Research on what feels natural and comfortable suggests that the sweet spot, while you're the one talking, is making eye contact only about half the time, 50%. This gives you explicit permission to look away, to glance at a notebook, to look out the window, letting your brain have those crucial moments to access memories and formulate thoughts free from that cognitive interference we talked about. And the other half of that rule is this. When you're the one listening, you want to bump that up to around 70%. It's a little higher because at this point, your brain isn't working as hard to formulate your own thoughts. This slightly higher number non-verbally communicates, I'm here with you, I'm engaged, I'm taking in what you're saying. Together, the 50-70 rule creates a natural, comfortable, and really effective rhythm that serves both the speaker's brain and the listener's need for connection. Okay, technique number 2 is an absolute game changer for diffusing that feeling of intensity. It's called the triangle technique. So instead of trying to lock on to one of their pupils, which is what creates that soul-piercing feeling, you just imagine a small, inverted triangle on their face. The points are their left eye, their right eye, and their mouth. And every 5 seconds or so, you just gently, softly shift your gaze from one point of the triangle to another. To them, it feels like steady, engaged eye contact. But for you, it keeps your eyes moving just enough to prevent your amygdala from getting fixated and firing off those stress signals. Next, let's totally rebrand looking away. We're going to transform it from a sign of avoidance into a non-verbal power move. When someone asks you a complex question, instead of panicking, you intentionally look up or to the side for a moment. This non-verbally communicates, that's an excellent question. Let me consider that. It makes you look thoughtful and intelligent. Then, and this is the key, you bring your gaze back to them as you deliver the most important part of your answer. This creates this incredibly confident rhythm. You connect to receive the question, you break the connection to think, and you reconnect to deliver with impact. And finally, the most powerful tool of all is just changing the story in your head. This is a cognitive behavioral technique called reframing. If your internal monologue is an anxious one, they think I'm weird, I'm being judged, then eye contact will always feel like a threat. So you have to consciously flip the script to a curious mindset. Instead of thinking about yourself, you get curious about them. Give yourself a little mission, like, I'm just gonna see what color their eyes are exactly, or I'm just gonna look to see if they're nodding to check if they're following what I'm saying. Curiosity and anxiety literally cannot coexist. When you become a gentle observer, you short-circuit the fear response. So, what is the big takeaway from all this? It's that we need to throw out the old, broken rules. Eye contact is not a rigid performance sport. It is not a staring contest where the first person to blink loses. A much healthier, kinder, and more accurate metaphor is that it's a dance. It's a fluid, rhythmic exchange of connection, of attention, and of personal space. And just like any good dance, some moments call for closeness and intensity, and other moments call for a little bit of space to breathe, to think, and to gather yourself before coming back together. And really, that's what this all comes down to. If you are one of the millions of people who has ever struggled with this, please stop being so hard on yourself. Your brain is not broken, it's not flawed. It's a magnificent, complex organ that is just trying to protect your energy and keep you safe. True, genuine human connection was never about staring holes into someone's skull. It has always been about something much simpler and much more profound. It's about being present with them. And sometimes, the most present thing you can do is give yourself the grace to look away, gather your thoughts, and return with something authentic and meaningful to share. So I'll leave you with a final thought to reflect on. Which part of that dance is trickier for you? Do you find it harder to maintain eye contact when you're searching for your own words, when your brain needs that cognitive space? Or is it harder when you're taking in someone else's story, when you're trying to show you're engaged? There's no right answer, but thinking about it can tell you a lot. I'd love to hear what you think in the discussion. Thanks for diving into this with me.